let's continue down. So he had you buy all of them.
More or less. I mean, he kept pushing. I was like, just go through the list and like which ones have potential and find out what's going to cost. And by the way, I'll back you. I'll help you raise the money. I was like, all right. So if you're going to make, help us with the financing and the money part to turn these properties into superstars, then we can do these, I was like, we can do these 12. And he was like, well, I think these 5 would be good. And there was a bunch of back and forth there to finally we're like, all right, these are the 18 that have the potential to make exceptional short-term rentals. So we'll buy these ones. So we're clearing 18 out of like the 70 homes he's trying to sell.
And how below market were those?
What's that?
Below market, because those are below market value right now. So what's the delta between the price that you guys got those for and the
well, in this particular deal where the rehab is included in the purchase. So he's got 2 general contractors in the market that are renovating all of the properties. In fact, out of the 18, only 5 are left to be renovated. And so since effectively we're doing all the work, I'm actually currently working with the team and the renovations and helping them with like the design, because we're purpose renovating them for short-term rental. So we're in the process of literally installing a sauna and just a spa room into one of the properties. Like this whole area that would have been 2 bedrooms is actually going to be a spa with a sauna, a wet dry sauna, cold plunges, hot soaking tubs. That's going to be a purpose-built spa for short. Look at George Smile, like it's going to be awesome. Yeah, because not a lot of people are doing this in this market, so it's going to be epic. So they're purpose renovating them for that right now. And so since it's not the type of deal where we got to close, then we can start the renovations. We're actually buying properties that are in progress in renovation, and we're not going to have to do so much of that post-close renovation work. They're just being sold at fair market value based on renovations being complete.
And you guys identified that there was a need in the market for what you were actually putting in there, correct?
100%.
Yeah, totally. I didn't realize it was there, honestly. In fact, when we first started operating there, because we were just trying to build a relationship with like a really powerful and, skilled and high level real estate entrepreneur, right? It was like the whole purpose. So we were just going in there and like, let's help Matt out with these short-term rentals that he has in St. Louis. I would have never advised anyone to invest there beforehand. And then when we started operating these properties there, what I realized is like the reason the numbers look so bad in St. Louis is because no one is doing a good job. Yeah. We're doing short-term rentals in Coachella Valley, in Scottsdale, in Las Vegas. Houston is a huge metro. Yeah. These places are hyper competitive, and you've got to really bring your A game to be successful in these markets that we're used to operating in. So we brought that same game to St. Louis, and we just realized the reason no one's making money is because no one was doing it at the level that we're doing at in these other markets where you have to do it that way to make any money at all. And so that's why the properties that we're currently operating there are making almost twice as much as similar sized properties, because we understand you got to amenitize the heck out of them and provide this exceptional guest experience in order to make money. It's like no one else has figured that out in St. Louis yet. So we're basically the first people doing it, and it's working pretty well.
And are we recording this? Just kidding.
Yeah, we're recording. We're recording. And how many properties are you managing in St. Louis right now?
We're managing 3.
Up and running.
Up and running 3.
3 up and running. And are those part of the same portfolio, or are those separate from it?
No, those are included in those 18 units. Yeah. And 7 others are being managed by another management company that was just helping Matt before we got there. Right. And so when we say we're doing twice as much, when we did a side by comparison of their 7 versus our 7 on a basis of revenue per bedroom, which I think is the most comparable way you can break down their performance, is revenue per bedroom door. We're doing 180% of what they're doing. Almost double.
It really makes you wonder how. I'm not meaning this to be such a sell, but it really does make me wonder, because we know that on a national basis, a lot of vacation spending is down. Mm-hmm. So it makes me wonder, when the economy kind of tips to a different direction where it starts, being on the massive increase again, what that will do to a lot of these numbers in these different markets, already for places that are already doing pretty well. So
I'm looking forward to finding out. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me chime in. Let me chime in on properties. That. So when you say a lot of vacation spending is down, I think, nationally, the spending is actually an average of 10 to 15% up year over year. The industry's growing, the actual supply and the dollars spent are growing. What happens is, I think, most people think the vacation spending is down because you are hearing negative comments about Airbnbs, and it's literally because this industry is getting saturated, and then you have players like ourselves coming in with these higher end properties.
I don't have a thought necessarily that the industry for Airbnbs isn't growing. More my thought is, in general, you see how much reports are about people having massive debt on their personal homes, massive credit card debt. And while you might have incremental growth regarding the industry, because I'm a big advocate of short-term rentals in regards to traveling with a family, the biggest difference that we see, and this is talking from we own some short-term rentals that Trevor manages for us. And, and the value that we offer is that if you have got a group of 4 or maybe 2 or 3 families, even because we've got, some 5-bedroom homes, that we're able to provide a massively huge savings with amenities compared to, if you had a little group that wanted to go stay at some hotels and they get, 4 different hotel rooms, each hotel room is, $300 a night. We offer, the same cost for, 3 different families potentially to be in one place at the same cost per night. And they get fantastically better amenities, a full kitchen within their unit, games, the game room included. We've got a secret, speakeasy bar inside one of our places. We've got another mirrored disco room in one of our spots. And, and those are a big value to a group that's traveling together. So no, I'm a big advocate. I'm a huge advocate. I think that the Airbnb space has allowed there to be a much more affordable way to do the vacation moment.
Yeah, I totally
growing.
I agree.
But I do also still look at the economy in general, and I look at the amount of personal debt that regular individuals have, and I look at that and I go, when this actually drops a bit, there'll be additional spending also, into the Airbnb short-term rental markets.
Yeah, just a quick comment on that. If there was to be a recession tomorrow or next year, people would first stop going to the national vacation market. So the first thing to go is your Hawaii's, your Aspen, Colorado's, your vacation spots where people fly to, national markets. So we invest in recession-resistant markets, and that essentially means that there are going to be slower growth markets. They're going to have, they're going to be secondary-ish markets, more drivable markets, right? And there's going to be slow growth in hospitality and in the vacation rental industry and real estate, right? So in your budget and secondary markets always thrive because people still like to drive and get together, right?
One thing that we're always looking at is downside risk. What is the downside risk on most of these things? And Trevor and I went through the numbers on this St. Louis portfolio. And, and what I really value about it the most was that, because the concern I've always got for a short-term rental is, well, what happens if the market does go away? And the reality is that you've got the intrinsic value of the home in its initial basis of a place that someone can live. And that in an ability to be able to either rent that out or sell that, provides a lot of, downside protection, because that's one thing that we're constantly struggling with the multifamily market. The returns have just become so compressed that the cap rate compression in the market has, made it so that, you are almost getting, on a go forward basis, this is going to change. But in the last cycle, it was that the only way you're really able to gain a lot of value in your asset was as a result of cap rate compression, in compared to having cash flow produced with the asset. Short-term rental market, is a blend. You've got this ability to rent it out in top line, short-term rental market, secondary, just based on what you could rent it for a long-term tenant. And then third, hey, this is what it's worth as a home. And if you were to sell the portfolio at this basis, what's your return look like then? And the reality is that return basis is still enough to provide security. You're not, I shouldn't say, we don't have guarantees in investments, but that downside protection is there because you've got this initial basis of, structures are getting harder to build. Costs of building structures are continuing going up. And that's the reason we all invest in real estate, because it's inflation resistant.
Yeah, and it's a fragmented market too, much more fragmented than multifamily.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's so many, there's like an old guard in multifamily, well-established best practices that if you're not doing it, you don't have a chance of operating and surviving in that world. Whereas in short-term rentals, there's so few really quality operators that a bunch of subpar operators do just fine because no one's come in from, Southwest, desert markets and big metro markets and done things there that they're not seeing, like in the, St. Louis example. Like you can get away with a lot of really, poor practices for probably not for much longer, but it's kind of like therein lies the opportunity,
I see a lot of opportunities across my desk from short-term rentals in certain markets that you've mentioned, Scottsdale, Houston, Dallas, where they've got an operator who got in and they're finding out that it was a lot harder than they thought. I see it a lot. Yeah. I see these opportunities across my desk, and those are the ones that were, I was kind of looking at going, well, how are we expecting to do it better or different? Or is the reality that, as they're trying to get out of this investment they paid too much for on the going in?
Yeah.
100%.
So let's get back to kids.
Yeah, I was just thinking that too. I want to hear a little bit about, I know so much about George's businesses, not as much about his dadding life. That's always something that you do outside of working hours.
Sounds good.
So lessons, let's hear them, George. You got a 2-year-old, it's a boy. What are you going through right now? What have you learned? How's your sleep? You can have any more.
Love it. Sleep is perfectly fine. He is a little bit of, he's what do you call that? He's an only child, right? So, I feel like sometimes he gets away with a little bit too much. And, I'm seeing how that could affect and being an only child and getting everything he wants, right? So, big lesson, start early. So we're already planning, the wife and I, on where we're going to put him to school. We're actually looking into a soccer sort of training that they start at 2 and 3, cause he already loves soccer, right? So we want to start early, get that mindset of like drive, because I see his drive. I could see the drive in a little 2.5-year-old or 2.25, right? He's only 2 years and 3 months. So get him to learn early. Big one, right? Be there for them. So my goal is in 2025 to never work on the weekends, in which I have been working some on the weekends now, but definitely not as much as I used to. And then just be there to be this father figure that I never had, right? So always fulfilling my destiny, per se, right? So he needs a brother, or a sister, so we're working on that too.
Okay. Nice.
Okay. That was when you said he's an only child. I was like, okay, so maybe that's going to be the plan. But so glad to hear that number 2 is in the mindset. And how has being a dad changed you?
I asked myself that question. There's just one big thing that I noticed about myself. Like, I am more patient. I always want things to happen, and that's just part of my personality. I want them to happen fast, right? And that's just not reality all the time, right? And it's probably not reality ever. So he has taught me to be patient. Because especially when he was a baby, right? You have to be patient. So, I found myself, actually understanding that and fulfilling that. And that has been huge for me. Being patient, being a little bit more understanding and empathetic, as a single entrepreneur on the hustle life for many, many years, changing my life completely, and, marrying someone that's amazing, and then having a child that's, all of a sudden, a couple, 2-3 years later, I find myself a completely different person, more patient, more empathetic, right? More understanding. And, like I'm seeing a lot of me in him. So I want to channel that energy.
Yeah, I can echo that for sure. I think that was a big thing for me in becoming a dad was recognizing the micro accomplishments of an infant to a toddler to a little boy. Is seeing these things where you kind of want them to get the thing right, but yet they're learning everything. Everything is new. It doesn't
they're
matter.
Starting from zero.
And And, and I think about some of these things where, you want them to do it a certain way.
Yeah.
And, and there's this moment where you might want to snap. Hey, you might want to yell really quick. Hey, do it like this. But then you remember they don't know.
They don't know. And they just want to try.
They just want to try.
And you know what? They've got to get burnt. Like a big thing I've learned is like, because I see in my daughter, especially my older one who's just turned 5, it's like she wants to do a thing, and I'll proceed to show her how, but then she instantly wants to be like, "Oh, let me do it." Right? She just wants to get pointed in the right direction and not have it done for her. And even though she's going to do it totally wrong, she has got to learn that she's going to do it totally wrong. And I just got to sit back and let her learn how to do it the wrong way. And when she's ready to ask me to show her how to do it the right way, I will. But like, that's kind of one, lesson that I've just keep relearning is like, just let them fail. They're just asking you to point them in the right direction. If that, just give them a 1-word answer to like, start there, and they'll go start there wrongly, and just let them do it.
On a tips and tricks basis, since we have some of these regarding potty training and other things, I'd say the biggest effort for me is learning how to make things into a fun game to not have struggle with education on things. Education, anything. So with my son with brushing his teeth, my sister was the one who actually told me this. She goes, if you say he's got an elephant in the back of his mouth and you have to brush him, he'll let you brush it. Versus like it'll be a game. All of a sudden, oh, there's an elephant. Oh, let me get it. Let me get it. And it started out, we were brushing my son's teeth, and he loved biting the toothbrush. And he's like, he's just biting, and it was turning into kind of like this, like kind of struggle. We're trying to teach him to brush his teeth, but we're not brushing him at all. And he thinks it's really fun to bite the toothbrush. And I'd started doing this, and now he's like, Dad, you got to get this. He doesn't, his vocabulary's not quite that good, but he's like, I've got a zebra. He says, I've got a zebra. I've got a porcupine. And then we'll go in and we'll brush his teeth. Luckily, he's only got a couple, so the surface area is not that big. We get it done pretty quick. But it was just such a reminder that if you make these things fun, even if it sounds so silly and ridiculous, kids love it. It makes things easier. So the game, hey, get that thing out of there so we can get the monster out of the closet kind of a thing. And all of a sudden you'll see them starting to do things that are fun rather than instructing. I feel like the more instructing I do with him, the more pushback I get, the more we try to make things fun. Even if it's silly. Hard thing to look at, yeah. And like the tactication and trying to figure out how to be patient, how to do the thing at the house with the almost 3-year-old. And it's I definitely gotten and how to do it.
I think that's a tried and true approach. Make it fun. I've always heard of that as a go-to, successful model. I just don't have the creativity to come up with like, there's an elephant in your mouth. Let me get it. How do you?
Yeah, I that one wasn't mine. I was going to say that one was from my sister, but it did turn into a giggle fest after we started doing it. So I was pretty pleased that one had worked out.
Yeah, I need to look out for more things like that. It's a good.
But that's the thing.
That's a first for me.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It doesn't have to be like because I think that's the fallacy. Oh, when you're an adult, you have to make the game somehow with defined rules, or somehow it has to be this like advanced thing. It's like, dude, the kids are toddlers. They just want to play. They want to
tell them there's an elephant there. Tomorrow it's a zebra. The next day it's porcupine.
Yeah. Whatever it is, it all works. And and I liked it was Angel. He was talking about the potty training where they were doing with the gummy bears. I thought that was a great one.
Yeah.
We'll have to have some of those things added in. Actually, we are having some of those things added in. We are going to have on our Real Estate Dads podcast website the tutorial from all of our guests and all of their tips and tricks from parenthood that's going to be on there. So that's something we are getting work to.
Hey, you know what? I love that. I'll have to visit that because I am still learning. 2.5 years later.
Never ending.
It never ends. It never ends. Yeah, it never ends. And and that's one thing, and I've talked about step parents on this podcast multiple times. And this isn't to fault people who are step parents, but they generally are on a hard learning curve, not recognizing the micro accomplishments of children. And they step into a point where instead of making the game or understanding what the growth arrived to, where there's do it like this, and that's causing a lot of pushback because they haven't built the rapport or seen it, from when the kid was so young. That's something that is I think is a challenge for people who end up in that step parent role. But for you, George, you got the one boy. How many do you guys want to have?
Well, the goal is to have another one, and it seems like we did the doctor test for the doctor. We've been trying for a year, so we're in the process of. I think we have to do this IBF thing that I just found out about, right? So, just one more is the goal. So he can have a brother or sister. And it's perfect timing right now. He's still 2, so by the time that the other one comes on, he'll be like three and something, So we are in the final stages of making a decision. So it should be in the next maybe couple of months, So it is not easy for us, So it should be in the next couple of months where we figure out and get the ball rolling, because we've been working on it. We've been trying to cook them for about 9 months already. Just things don't work out, sometimes.
Yeah. We've had some stories and some guests who have been on here with some relatively harrowing stories regarding pet thinking and getting pregnant. Thing putting them on the call. And especially people who haven't had kids, it's a big one. Going through that process is not a minor one. So we'll be keeping you in our prayers for that. I will, for sure.
Thank you, brother.
And so to get in touch with George, you can connect with him. George, what's your personal website?
George Salas 360. So that's it's got everything, all my socials, and
what is that? That's Instagram. That George Salas 360, and where is that?
That is
website.
That is a website.
Okay, George Salas 360.com. And if you want to invest in the St. Louis portfolio, you connect with George there, or you can connect through our website, the realestatedadspodcast.com. If you've enjoyed this episode, come connect with us. We care about connecting with people who are dads, with people who are at points of changing careers, people who want to invest in real estate, people who care about their family and being networked with other individuals who are doing the same. If you feel like you might be a great guest for this show, contact us there also. And if you want to be an investor in real estate, that is a place to find and get access to investment opportunities as well, including the St. Louis portfolio we've talked about on this show. George, thanks so much for being on this. Do you have any last words for the guests? And Trevor, same question to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, gentlemen. I appreciate your advice and raising kids and all your stories. I'm glad to be here, and if you're listening out there, just getting started, whether you are at the beginning of your journey or towards the middle, or you're savvy, there's always a way to continue the growth, and hanging out with people like we have in this group. This community is amazing. So I love the Real Estate Dads podcast group, and you guys are awesome. So thanks for having me again. Appreciate you.
Yeah, we're so glad we did. Absolutely.
Bad, George. I would just say that as I'm, kind of sitting here watching, one of my business partners talk this whole time, the biggest lesson that comes to mind is the mastermind that we all met in is the first time that I paid to put myself in a room with high level people like yourself and like other people we're working with. And I was really apprehensive about doing that for most of my professional career and other things I did and other pursuits, other entrepreneurial pursuits included. And after having done that, because I've heard the term like mastermind, like what is that? Sounds kind of when you've never done one, you're really kind of apprehensive of the idea. At least I was, right? Yeah. Like I'm going to spend all this money to what? Like talk to other people? Like, like how do you define what you're going to get? And now looking at where we're at now, and that's how we all met. We're all working on these cool deals. We've all got deals out of it. And it just comes from putting myself and all of us doing the same thing, putting yourself in the room with people that are doing the thing that you want to do at the level that you want to do it at. So,
love it.
We're prime examples of why it works. So like, do it.
Yeah, I really am in agreement. And I echo everything that you said, Trevor. I think my thoughts, to sum it up, is that, some of these masterminds, I do think you should interview the masterminds, make sure it is the right fit. I have heard of some masterminds that have not been good. The one that we met in, I do recommend, which was Raise Masters. But is that, you're not just paying to meet people, you are paying to be part of a group of people who all take their business seriously. And they're paying money to be part of a body of people who are also doing the same. These are all people that are committed to growing their business. And, and of course, always some people more than others, but I've been so pleased with, the entrepreneurial skills that I've learned from other people on this call, so agreement with both of you on that. And Real Estate Dads, we are going to sign off right now. George, thank you for being a part of this interview and sharing your experiences, your big wins, and your experiences also through the loss. I have to say, that's a big one.